So next, we're going to go to the second aspect that I was talking about at the beginning. And we saw geographical and spatial conditions are very important, but now we're going to see that also economic and sociocultural relations are very important. And as in the geographical and spatial part, the social conditions, the cultural conditions differ extremely in each of the local and regional governments that we see. So this uniqueness, this diversity of actors should be understood, and they should be getting involved so we can actually see the realities of our territories. And this means that, that we have to take into account these stakeholders and these different sectors, that maybe these stakeholders that we identified and these different sectors should be strengthened or should be promoted, so to have, as I was saying in the beginning, better resiliency strategies. So who are these stakeholders that we're talking about? We're talking about public sector that, as you probably know, is composed by, of course, local, regional, national governments, but also by organizations and agencies that are key actors in the resilience building scenario. As you can imagine, in any development strategy, the local and regional governments must have good and clear capacities, adequate resources, for sure, to mobilize the collaboration and the cooperation that we need to actually develop some strategy. So in the case of resilience strategies, this is not any different from other development strategies. Other thing that is very important in this case of resilience is that if we see multi-level governance, when there is an emergency, multi-level governance is needed and is intensified, because communities will expect to have public health, and they wouldn't care about who is given the public health. They don't care the public health. They don't care if it's the national, the regional, or the local government. But so this means that this multi-level governance is going to be needed, and additional efforts regarding coordinations and regarding communication among levels of governments are going to be needed. Other part that is important in this part of the public sector is other actors that are working also in residual building in sectors like, for example, education or knowledge. So, for example, public universities, research centers, or also, for example, in the case of public schools. So universities and research centers can and are generating high added value information that we're going to be needed for the strategies. Research centers can be applying different research in fields that are able to help us as well, for example, in terms of mobility, in terms of reduction of pollution. And as I was saying, for example, schools can be something that can promote awareness on children, to make them familiar with the hazards that are coming, or that might impact them, or also taking actions and educate them to take action to protect themselves and protect their families. So this is the public sector. So we now have the second stakeholder, which is the private sector. Actually, the private sector intake in this kind of resilient management part is more about reducing risk. Those are the challenges for them, reducing risk, and for sure the practice of responsibility and of having public interest in mind. Local and regional governments must promote that actually the actions that are taken into account by, or that are being in place by private sectors are actually that they actually can see them, that they can actually promote it, and the local and regional governments can also help them to reinforce these actions, and also to give them some incentives or some specific aid. Finally, with this, it is important also to see that in terms of crisis, one of the most important things is for the local economy to be recovering very fast, or as soon as possible. So because we need, and we know that in these situations, it's going to be easier, or it's going to be better for the local community to have a stronger local economy, and this will help to achieve cohesive and robust society in a context of uncertainty. So this is the part of private sector. And finally, we have the third actor, which is civil society. And as you know, civil society is a key actor for DRR and also for building resilience. And usually we take the challenge that mostly it is difficult for civil society to participate. Is one of the main challenges. So to make the civil society participate in the decision-making process, not just from their houses, but from their neighbors, and of course for the territorial level. So this is another thing that also regional and local governments can actually reinforce. Maybe we can pass to the next slide. So we wanted to share with you the case of Asunción. Asunción is the capital city of Paraguay, and Asunción is part of this program called City Resilient Profiling Tool that was created or was developed by UN Habitat. This program actually is aiming to identify cross-cutting issues that have impact on DRR strategies that are promoted by local and regional governments. So in the case of Asunción, the resilience strategy has actually been focusing on strengthening and creating systemic vision for risk management, and also to identify key stresses. So what did they do? First of all, they map the stakeholders involved to understand their links to different sectors, and of course to the links and the vinculation that the different stakeholders have in resilience building and risk management. When they did that, they have to research and to see the legal frameworks, the different competency and plans, the initiatives, and of course, this gave us a result, a very good picture of the multi-stakeholder partnership that was created with different actors. This engagement was not linear, so it means that no one specific actor was involved in this, but when they did that, they discovered that several actors were participating in different parts. So they discovered that they must also analyze the sectors. So when they discovered the sectors, they identified that one of the sectors was the supplies and logistics, the mobility, the municipal public services, also social inclusion, economic, and ecology. After that, what they did was that they identified key conditions and challenges. So they identified that they were having some weakness regarding the transparency, that they weren't having a metropolitan agency that was strong enough. They were also identified that due to the decentralization process, they were very dependent on the central government, and local and regional government. Local government, in this case of Asunción, didn't have a very good relations in terms of policy development or multi-level governance. So they discovered this when applying this tool. And finally, they generated recommendations. So the main recommendations that they had here in Asunción was to actually build a systemic intersectoral resilient strategy around different topics: water cycle, mobility, urban connectivity, and economic. With this, they created several projects, three projects specifically, that entail those topics that I was saying, those recommendations, but that also intake the mapping that they were doing. And one of the interesting things that they avoid using the usual timeline to the short, middle, and long-term approach. What they did is that they actually divided the actions in the actions that were directly implemented by the local government, by Asunción. The other actions were actions that needed agreements. So for example, in the case where other stakeholders will have to participate more, or for example, other levels of governments will have to participate more, let's say some metropolitan service. In that case, you have to take to an agreement to actually advance. And the third part was to actually create or reinforce the advocacy in the actions related to these plans that actually were not in in the room of actions of the Asunción. So how did they negotiate with the other levels of government? So we believe that it is actually a very good example of how was these different stakeholders can be included in a specific solution. So as I was saying, with this example, maybe we can go to the slide before. So we are going to see before this. So what we see is that we have the stakeholders, public, private, and social section, and now we have the other part, that is, as we saw in the case of Asunción, that we are having the social, the cultural, and the economic and the environment sector. So when doing this DRR or the resilience building strategies, we have also to take into account the different circumstances or the different things that this area can actually bring us.